This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
I am back from the East-West Shrine game, and I have a few hours in my regular studio to record a video. And I'm going to use it talking about the Cleveland Browns coaching search. Now, I want to be very clear and very calm with what I'm going to say and how I'm going to say it. First thing I want to be clear about. My feelings about the process of the Cleveland Browns and who they end up hiring as head coach are two completely different things. I don't have any beef with Jim Schwartz. I don't think Jim Schwartz is who I would like to hire if I were in charge, but I don't think Jim Schwartz is a disastrous hire. I think Jim Schwartz can very easily be competent. I think you can have a winning season or maybe even two with Jim Schwartz. I do have a worry about the long-term sustainability of that and what Jim Schwartz is going to do for the offense. But if we're just talking about the individual that you hired and we're not talking about any of the process stuff behind it, Jim Schwartz is fine. But this video isn't about Jim Schwartz or not. And look, we don't know if Jim Schwartz is going to be hired. This might all just be smoke, and he's not hired. My issue is what I've brought up this entire coaching search for a good reason. See, I have been saying since we got a sniff that Kevin was going to get fired, that we would be better off focusing on the process versus the name that actually gets hired. The name that gets hired is the name that gets hired. Ultimately, it's somebody that we don't know very much about, right? Whether it's Grant Udinski, Nathan Shieldhouse, or even like Jim Schwartz, who hasn't been a head coach in like 10 years, right? We don't know what they're going to be. But we do know what the process could have been to bring them in. And if that feels like something an organization that is operating competently is doing. If the rumors that we are hearing are true, I am very, very concerned that the Cleveland Browns franchise has unfortunately gone all the way back to square one. And when I say all the way back to square one, Jimmy Haslam's making decisions again. Now, Jimmy's always making some level of decisions, but Jimmy's making football decisions again, which is the worst possible scenario. I don't know if this is the case. I don't want to present this as if it is fact. I'm just talking about some of the things that are out there and just telling you how I feel about it. We don't have to act like this is happening. We can wait for the actual results to come in and then have a reaction. But a lot of people have been asking me how I feel about some of these updates. I feel like I'm going to give people what they want here, right? What do I feel about some of these updates that I've heard? Now, in order to know how I feel about some of the updates, I got to tell you what the updates are, right? So first thing I heard, and this is sourced from Jared Mueller, who is also speculating here based on what he's hearing. And he says, this is from Jared Mueller. From what I'm hearing, Jimmy Haslam is pretty hell-bent on keeping Jim Schwartz as DC. While that keeping Jim Schwartz may not be an overall issue, the forced nature of it is a concern for many candidates. Grant Udinski, for example, had a different defensive coordinator in mind. Shieldhouse had another option, maybe not as strong as Udinski. It's also possible, but less likely, that Jimmy would like to keep Bubba Ventrone, a coach that he pushed to join the team a few years ago. Haslam tipped his hand in the press conference after firing Kevin Stefanski when asked, do you want Jim Schwartz to remain in the organization? And the owner said, absolutely, great coach. All right, so that's what Jared is saying. There's also Some reports here, Mary Kay saying one league source tells me that Jim Schwartz seems to be gaining momentum for the Browns coaching search. Stay tuned. Now, look, when it comes to these kind of reports, and I got respect for Mary Kay, but what the fuck does it mean to be gaining momentum in one of these things? Like, I got to ask the question, and I don't mean to be profane here, but seriously, what does that mean? What is that? Like, I've gotten to the point to where I'm questioning, like, what does that mean? Somebody's gaining momentum. This head coach search has gone on for a month, and like 8 different people have been gaining momentum to get the Browns head coach job. It's not a fucking race. You know what I mean? Like, we talk about it like it's a race. It's not a race. You're hiring somebody. Either you hire them or you don't. What the fuck is gaining momentum? And why is everybody gaining momentum over the last month? Yeah, I just feel like it's just a thing you can throw out there. To say, I think Jim Schwartz might be getting the job, but I'm not sure enough about it to say it outright. I think that's what gaining momentum means if we actually break it down. It's not really like an accurate description of what it is. It's just like Mary Kay's hedging her bet. She thinks that it's going to be Jim Schwartz. That's the best way I can interpret it. Jeremy Fowler, who's an important person to watch here, Brown's decision appears unlikely tonight after interviewing Nathan Schillhouse. The feeling amongst some involved has been that Cleveland would reconvene after the Nate Schillhouse interview and figure things out. So that's where I actually think things are, which is the Browns did their round of interviews. They're going to reconvene, and they're going to talk it over. You know, I didn't know if Jimmy had the availability to do an overnight thing, but they're going to think about it overnight, and they're going to probably come to a decision sometime tomorrow. Or maybe Wednesday. Maybe they need to give it another day. Diana Rossini says the Cleveland Browns are currently flying back from Los Angeles to Cleveland. Discussions are ongoing, expected with the expectation that the group will meet tomorrow morning and make the final decisions. So again, Diana Rossini, who we know is connected with Cleveland at times, Jeremy Fowler, who we know has connections in Cleveland, another person to watch like Peter Schrager, who has connections in Los Angeles if the hire ends up being Schillhouse. So that's where we are. The Browns have interviewed everybody. They're mulling over their decisions. They will probably make a decision by the time this video is uploaded, ironically enough. What decision they're gonna make, I don't know. But they're gonna make a decision tomorrow. Now, there are a few things to go over with what we just heard. And mainly it has to go with the Jim Schwartz thing. Now, if you know me and you've watched my videos, you know that I'm not opposed to keeping Jim Schwartz. I think that Jim Schwartz is a good defensive coordinator, and he had a good defense, and some of the holes that you see on this defense wouldn't really bother you if the team was better. And realistically, they had as many holes as any other elite defense had. It's just the Browns were such a shitty offense that those holes cost games when it doesn't have to. That's kind of where the Browns are and why Jim Schwartz is coveted. So I get if it was possible to get your guy and keep Jim Schwartz, that you would want to have that option available. I'm not upset at the idea of like, hey, we don't know who you know, but we like Jim Schwartz. We would like you to consider Jim Schwartz as an option. But if the person that you love or like as a head coach does not want to keep Jim Schwartz, then you got to let it go. I also said that in the earlier video, right? That it wasn't Jim Schwartz or nothing. And that ultimately, Jim Schwartz is a lot like Greg Roman, where you can let him go and retain a lot of the stuff that Jim Schwartz does with the new defense. And I'm sure any defensive coordinator who comes in will retain a lot of that stuff. Ultimately, the Browns defensive coordinator position is an attractive position. It's unlike the offensive coordinator job, or even you can argue the head coaching job at this point. But the defensive coordinator job, I mean, like, yeah, it's a pretty solid job. You're going to get people excited to take that job because it has Myles Garrett. It's a great roster. It's already elite. You can add to it. You got the sack champion on the roster, the best defensive player in all of football. Hell yeah, you can fill that job. So I wasn't going to live or die by Jim Schwartz. Would I be open to keeping Jim Schwartz? Yeah. If you talk to Grant and you're like, hey, man, what do you think about Jim Schwartz? And he's all for it, go for it. That's fucking awesome. Yeah, that makes sense. If you talk to Nathan and he's all for it, Jim Schwartz, go for it. But if they're insistent that they don't want to keep Jim Schwartz, then let them fucking go. Now, this depends on a couple of other things, right? We don't know how much they love the interviews that they got with these guys. It could be that Grant had a shitty interview and Nathan had a shitty interview, even though I highly doubt it because Nathan's interview was like 12 hours. But it could be that they had bad interviews and then not wanting to keep Jim Schwartz was the cherry on top. That could definitely be the case. I don't want to dismiss that as a possibility. It could also be that like these guys knocked it out the park, but Jimmy's like, nah, if they don't want to keep Jim Schwartz, it's not for me. Now, if they end up keeping Jim Schwartz and retaining Bubba Ventrone, why did you even fire Kevin in the first place? And I'm saying this as somebody who understood why Kevin should have been fired. I get it. I've been critical of Kevin running back the same fucking staff in Atlanta. So not even somebody who was upset at the Kevin firing. But like, if you do this, why did you fire him? What purpose did that serve? If you wanted continuity, then go for continuity. Go 10 toes down, have some fucking balls, and stand on it and keep Kevin Stefanski, even though it's unpopular, because that's what you desire. But you're trying to half-step it. You're trying to do a half measure, or at least that's what's being reported. And if the Browns do a half measure, they're going to get half-ass results, which is going to lead to winning less than half of your fucking games. This has been the gospel of the Cleveland Browns for my entire life. See, if the Browns wanted to go all in on a young guy, I was all for it. If you wanted to go and do a retread like a McDaniel or whatever, cool. If you wanted to keep Kevin, I would have been very, very worried about that working. But hey, you want to go 10 toes down on continuity? At least you're doing something and you're not twitching, right? You're not shying away. You're not flinching. You're doing what you need to, and you're doing what you believe in. What about this search at this point makes you feel like the Browns believe in anything in particular? Like, even look at the interview list. Todd Monken, Jim Schwartz, that says one thing. Nathan Shieldhouse, Grant Udesky, that sounds like another thing. I worry that what we're seeing in that dynamic of the four guys they've interviewed and taken seriously for this job, you got Jimmy guys and you got Andrew guys. And that's what's going on. And if that is what's going on, we know who's going to win that power struggle. We know who's going to end up being hired. And we know how that ends with Jimmy Haslam. And you can't fire Jimmy Haslam. You can fire Andrew Berry, and if they go this route, I don't like Andrew's chances to make it outside the year of 2026. And that'd be that. Now, again, I want to be clear. This is just speculation. We do not know what the Browns are going to do. We won't know what the Browns are going to do until they tell us what they're going to do. Now, if by some misfortune, I'm just going to upload this video in the middle of the night. Maybe I'll just do that just so it gets a few hours of being evergreen. Because I get the sneaking suspicions that they're going to drop this thing like right when I drop the 6 a.m. video just to be assholes. But, yeah, that's my concern. That the Browns are doing the thing again that they've done before, where they eschew the process to appease Jimmy Haslam. And every time they've done that, it's ended in disaster. Now, I like Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz is a good defensive coordinator. I think he should. If a head coach is willing to bring him back, be the DC here. And look, let's be clear about what's going on in the rest of the NFL. People are going to act like the Browns are the only team in the league that wanted a team to keep their defensive coordinator. That's not true. The Atlanta Falcons, the job that ironically enough Kevin Stefanski took, they were pretty adamant to Kevin Stefanski that he keep the current defensive coordinator, and that is what Kevin Stefanski agreed to. So what the Browns are doing here, it's not unheard of. It's just the extent to which the Browns are doing it that is unheard of, that is dysfunctional. Again, I got no problem with you wanting a head coach, especially a inexperienced head coach, to consider Jim Schwartz seriously for the defensive coordinator position. But if that guy has somebody else they want to hire and they can explain it to you and sell it to you, then let him fucking hire the guy he wants to. What's the harm in that? This defense has a really high floor. It's pretty, like, you can allow for some experimentation there if that is what feels like it's necessary. Because ultimately, this isn't to put Jim Schwartz in the best position if he's not the head coach. This is to put whoever the new head coach is in the best position. So, again, it's not the idea that's dysfunctional. People are going to make it seem like the Browns are the only team that would try to do this. They're not the only team this cycle that has tried to do this. Multiple other teams have done this. The problem is the level in which the Browns are willing to commit to this, allegedly. Now, again, this might not be true. They hire somebody, and we laugh about this in like 10 hours. But that's my big concern. I got more concerns, but first let me thank my sponsor, Sleeper. Real quick, just want to let you guys know Sleeper has a new offer here. They're offering a free $20 entry, no deposit required. And also, if you're a first-time user, you also will receive a 100% match on up to $100 when you use the promo code Worst Take. Again, $20 free, no deposit required. Plus, first-time users also receive a 100% deposit match up to $100. Join Sleeper. I just want the Browns to make decisions that are sound at the end of the day, right? I don't want to be on here crashing out simply because the Browns didn't hire the guy that I like. I have set up my coverage of this head coach search to specifically avoid this. So I don't really care what name they go with at this point. I just really hope that the motivation behind the hire isn't some kind of half measure motivation. It isn't some kind of we got cold feet and scared motivation, that there is a actual vision behind the hire. And I think what the problem that most people are having here is you hire Grant Udinski, there is a vision that people can see and sell themselves on with that in the long term. You hire Nathan Shieldhouse, there is a vision that people can sell themselves on. You hire Jim Schwartz, well, the vision that you're selling just feels very limited. It doesn't really align with what we know about Andrew Berry, who tends to be extremely forward-thinking. Sometimes to a detriment, too forward-thinking at times. Someone who's willing to take risk in pursuit of being forward-thinking. Does this feel like anything that matches up with the person that has made some of the moves that he's made, good and bad? It really doesn't. Outside of the fact that he wanted Jim Schwartz to be the defensive coordinator here while Kevin was the coach, that's the only thing that can make me feel like maybe it was Andrew Berry. Or maybe Andrew Berry is more with this than we think. Or, maybe Jim Schwartz has a coordinator hire in mind that he can get his hands on that's going to blow us away. Maybe he's going to Mike Pettin us, right? When Mike Pettin was hired, everybody thought that was a dog dookie hire. But when we heard that staff get announced, we started to understand what he brought to the table. Maybe that's what Jim Schwartz is selling. I spent the whole first half of this video being very concerned. I'll spend the back half of this video trying to be optimistic about every choice, right? I've talked about Shieldhouse, but if they go with Jim Schwartz, maybe that's the case. Maybe Jim, because he had so much time in so many different places, he's put together a list of coaches that you can't say no to. And you think it's going to really fix the offense. Maybe Jim's not the long-term solution for this team, but maybe he's the Band-Aid that the team needs to get to where they want to get to. Maybe they feel like Jim Schwartz is legitimately the best person for the job. It's not crazy to see that being the case. Again, hiring Jim Schwartz, I don't really have an issue with that on the surface. My issue is that it feels like the way that it's been packaged is that hiring Jim Schwartz is something that Jimmy is demanding that the team do. And if that's the process that goes behind it, I'm concerned. But if you hire Jim Schwartz and you start to understand what the process was on this, where Jim Schwartz is like, no, like I'm going to get great coordinators to take these jobs. Then all of a sudden, then maybe we can like cut the Browns a little slack and maybe it wasn't what we thought it was. Again, with the Browns, it's so hard. The Browns are one of the most difficult teams in the NFL to cover. And the thing that makes it unique with Cleveland, right, and why the fog is there in the first place, is that Cleveland has not been good recently and has a gigantic history of failure. So when you hear somebody say something that sounds ridiculous, you can't dismiss it in Cleveland because you know it could happen. And that wastes so much time because half the crazy stuff that you hear that the Browns could do and the obscenely dysfunctional stuff that you hear, most of it, the Browns aren't doing it. But it only really takes one to make you dysfunctional. So if like 98% of the things that are rumored for you to do that are dysfunctional aren't happening, but 2% of those things are, well, guess what? You're dealing with dysfunction still. And that's kind of what it is with the Browns. There's so many dumb things that people suggest that the Browns are doing that they're absolutely not doing. But then there are a few things that are dumb that they actually are doing. And you might ignore it because you're thinking, oh, this is just another dumb thing that the people think the Browns are doing that they're not doing. But they might be doing that thing. And that's why it's like trying to find smoke in a fog. Everything looks like the same. It all looks like it could be smoke at the end of the day. But all of it's not. Most of it's not smoke. And that's what makes this team and covering this team extremely difficult. There are dumb things that the Browns are willing to do. Is telling two guys that they liked in the interview process to go kick rocks because they don't want to hire Jim Schwartz one of those things? I don't know. It could be true. Jimmy Haslam has done stuff like this before. But I don't think I know enough at this point, and I'm recording this video at 1:37 in the morning, Tuesday, January 27th. I don't know enough at this point to say, yeah, that's 100% what Jimmy's doing. My gut wants me to think that that's going to happen because I don't really trust Jimmy Haslam that much. But that's just my gut. And that's kind of the difficulty of covering this team. And that's what I mean when it's like trying to find smoke in the fog, especially with Cleveland, right? If somebody suggested that Pittsburgh was doing some ridiculous bullshit, nobody would believe it. It wouldn't be fog, right? It's easy to find the smoke because there's not a lot of fog in Pittsburgh or Baltimore. But it's kind of like trying to decipher because like my friend Ace, who covers the Bengals, he has the same problem when it comes to stories that come out about the Bengals being cheap. The Bengals have demonstrated that they are so cheap that literally anything you say about the Cincinnati Bengals, people will believe when it comes to them being cheap. You can say anything, and Ace will come on this show and tell you, because he has confirmed it, that like most of the stuff you hear is not true. 95% of the stuff you hear about the Bengals being cheap is either untrue outright or completely overblown or not happening anymore. But there is still 5% of that Bengals being cheap thing that's true, and that keeps all the other 95% alive. This is our Bengals being cheap. I don't know what the Browns are going to do. I don't want to pretend like I know what the Browns are going to do. I don't want to be angry early because I think I know what the Browns are going to do. And I don't want to undercut that Jim Schwartz could be bringing some stuff to the table that could make the hire make more sense if given some time. I don't want to act like Jim Schwartz is like the worst hire you could ever possibly make. It just is the least exciting hire, right? Like, it is the Browns equivalent to the Steelers hiring Mike McCarthy. It's kind of like a question of like, hey, man, why did you even fire the guy in the first place? Or allow the guy to step down? That's what I'm feeling, right? But maybe that feeling is wrong. Maybe the Browns and the Steelers are going to be battling out for the top of the division. I don't want to be that judgmental on it, right? To where I'm discounting that, because Jim Schwartz is a good coach. He's competent. He's been a head coach before. He might have something to offer here that we're underestimating. I don't know what that is, but I'd be foolish to act like somebody of that experience who's been good at his job that long and has won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator has nothing to offer. He clearly has something to offer. I just hope that whatever he has to offer isn't just appealing to one person in the process. I hope that if he does get hired, that this was a committee-led decision, not a Jimmy-led decision, not a D-led decision, but a committee-led decision. That we're not going to get he was outvoted 4-1 story again. Or that, Jimmy took the plane and went rogue and hired Hugh. Because I know what that dysfunction leads to, and it leads to the most embarrassing times to be a Browns fan. I don't want that. So that's my thoughts. I tried my best here to not sell Jim Schwartz short while trying to communicate why I think him potentially being hired could be a sign of a bigger problem, despite the fact that he's not that problem. Hope I got my thoughts through. If there's an update to this situation, please give me time. I'm going to be driving from where I live to Mobile, Alabama, and I'm not going to be able to make a video in the middle of the day, right? So if something happens, give me some grace. It'll come out later that night, but it's probably not going to come out immediately because I'm traveling to get you guys better coverage of the All-Star circuit. Went to East West Shrine. I'll be at the Senior Bowl. So, I'll get some eyes on some prospects, and I think that also is something that I could do to separate myself from most people. I actually go out and I see these prospects that I talk, about. I see the quarterbacks, I see the guys, I go out and I try to see them. So, trying to do that. That comes with the sacrifices, so please, again, if something drops tomorrow, give me some grace. But that's my thoughts. Y'all have a good one. Have an even better night. Peace.